Hello, everybody, and welcome to class lesson 6. The title of this lesson is How to Connect with and See the Invisible. Now, I just want to recap real quick on certain things that we touched on in the last lesson, and that was the interpersonal communications. You remember when I had the ring and I moved it over, etc., meaning I love you, but if I wear it on this finger, I might say things that might offend you, so on and so forth. Those were subtle clues of interpersonal communication. We're going to dive deeper now and we're going to enhance your understanding of that. So, with that, uh, the hardest thing for someone is the ability to connect and see with the invisible. But what is invisible? You know, they say that the way you treat the staff is the way you should treat everybody, right? But what does that mean? In the military, well, at least in the Marines, I don't know about the Chair Force or any other branch, we get taught how to respect everybody. We say good morning. We genuinely care. We want to go ahead and show that we are genuinely, paying attention. If you see trash on the floor, pick it up. Don't be a slob or like everybody else who walks past it, so on and so forth, because you never know who might be watching, because it's in the times in which you are not being around people where people might be watching you, and therefore those actions count so much more than the actions you put forth in front of people. So let's say you're hanging out in your apartment and you and your lady are getting hot and bothered, and then all of a sudden somebody magically knows what you guys are doing. Well, that's what I'm referring to, right? How do they know that? Those are the intricacies that you have to pay attention to and be aware of. So even if you're by yourself or you say something out loud in your car, which is a private space, and somebody says, "Hey, I heard somebody say this, this, and this." Well, where did you hear that from? I mean, you have to understand that you're always being watched and listened to. I mean, hell, you could go ahead and speak around your phone and start seeing advertisements for the very thing that you were just talking about. So this is where people who talk about mindfulness and being aware, they normally have a limited knowledge unless they've been exposed to the environment or exposed to a certain type of process that lets them know, okay, I could do this, this, and this way, or I could do these things in this time, so on and so forth. But when nobody's around and they think that no one is listening, there's always a little person around always listening. How many of you are adults, have children, and you slip up and say a curse word, and the child all of a sudden starts repeating that curse word, right? It's one of those things like, what was the movie, Meet the Fockers, where somebody said the word a-hole, and then all of a sudden the baby kept saying it over and over again. And it's like, please don't say that, blah, blah, blah. And everybody's like, where did he learn that word from? So on and so forth. So these are the things that you want to be not only aware of, but stay tuned to, or I should say, tap into, right? Some people would say tap in or whatever the case may be. Those are the invisible. That's kind of the invisible, right? But let's talk about when you're actually in front of people. So, what is invisible? Well, emotions are invisible, pain is invisible, internal sickness is invisible to a certain degree. With technology nowadays, you could see a lot of different sicknesses within people, but with mental health now being in the space, that's invisible. You don't see what somebody else is feeling or how their mentality is taking forth and shaping their world around them, especially with all these different types of technologies, Wi-Fi interfering with stuff, so on and so forth, Bluetooth, etc. So take that with a grain of salt. But these are all factors that most people do not take into account. When somebody asks you, what's your day like? I highly doubt they studied Sherlock Holmes and deductive reasoning and how to deduce somebody, or I should say, cold read somebody, and so on and so forth, to recognize things like body language and speech, right? It's very powerful. There's a saying that your words are powerful. What does that mean? Or the power of life and death rests on the tongue. Well, you can emotionally destroy somebody with words and tear them to shreds and make them feel a certain way, and then compound that if more and more stuff keeps adding up and you keep acting as though either you don't know what's going on or you truly don't know what's going on. So you just add fuel to the fire, right? Because some people may have not showered in 3 days. They may be homeless, or they may have mental issues, or they may be bipolar trying to hide it or fly under the radar, hoping that they get a shot at doing something. Everybody has their own issues. However, you have to treat everybody individually. Think like a doctor. You don't want to go based upon what the last person said, because that could be incorrect, and now that puts your career at jeopardy or at stake. So you have to take a holistic view, meaning an individual view of each person. Sounds like a lot of work, but if you want to be not only an effective communicator, but an effective listener, you have to understand these things, and that is what is going to lead you to success when it comes to connecting with and seeing the invisible. Now, in order to see the invisible, you must be able to feel what someone is saying with or without words. Now, for those of you who are parents, you are well aware of this. Or if you have a dog or a cat or whatever, you know something's wrong, and you talk to your dog or your child or whatever. It's like, what's wrong? And they do this thing, or the dog will look at the leash and then look at the door and then look at you and like, hey, I have to go out. And you kind of put two and two together without any words, right? I mean, for instance, take a look at the Olympics. I know breakdancing is new at the Olympics. However, they are communicating not only to the people, but they're also communicating to each other, because it's an engagement of sorts, right? It's a competition, but they're also letting the DJ, and the judges know that they are staying in tune with the beat. So not only are they listening, they're reacting and communicating and speaking back and forth to everybody at the same time without any words, utilizing their body. And everyone knows that the art form of dance does that very thing. The only difference is that most dances are choreographed. When you freestyle and then you start changing the songs up, it becomes more difficult. So if you are in business, breakdancing would be like being at a networking event. There are many different people there, but how do you speak and adjust to every single person, the musicality of the tone and the pitch of their voices, to go ahead and relate to them and build what's known as rapport? So here are some context clues for some of you that are, maybe lost in the sauce, or just never experienced this before. Some of you might be saying, well, I kind of know some of that stuff. I was kind of trained in this, but, if you're in sales or whatever, you have a decent understanding, but let's go further in depth, shall we? So some context clues you could pay attention to. The first one would be tone. So what is tone, right? When people say change your tone, so on and so forth, that's the general character, or how do I say this? By definition, it's the general character or attitude of a place, piece of writing, situation, etc. So when somebody's speaking to you, their tone can let you know if they're upset, disgruntled, sad, so on and so forth. Tony Robbins says, if you see somebody that's happy, how are they? Their voice is, hey, oh my God, hey, how's it going? And you can hear it in their voice, right? Just because of the tone, right? And then, of course, the complete opposite if they're sad. So when it comes to that context clue, that's very important, but it's very basic. So, your tone matters, but we want to build upon that, right? So the second thing that you want to do is pitch, right? And pay attention to the pitch. Don't think baseball like pitching and throwing or whatever, but I'm going to use references, so on and so forth. So when it comes to pitch, by definition, pitch is the quality of the sound governed by the rate of vibrations producing it. So the degree of height, a higher pitch or a lower pitch, so on and so forth. When people are down or whatever, or maybe they have a deep voice, they have a deep voice like this. Or, Mike Tyson sometimes, or you can have another person. My father has a friend, we call him Sticks, and he's like, yo man, what's up? But if you look at him, the voice doesn't correlate to the body. So you have to understand how to interpret, because everybody's different, and sometimes their voice doesn't correlate with what you're normally used to seeing. This is why you have to treat everybody as an individual case, not as a generality or as a whole, because when you treat people as a generality, you fall into the same category as a doctor that just listens to what the last doctor says, who probably got something wrong. I mean, I don't know if you ever seen Grey's Anatomy or House or The Resident. accident. But House was notorious for this. What did the last doctor do? Yeah, I'm sure he did his job correctly because that patient ended up here, so on and so forth, right? And now he had to actually go to work as a diagnostician and actually break everything down and figure out what was the actual cause of the injury to solve it. So we have tone, right? Your tone is, well, how does the voice make you feel, right? The pitch is the high or lowness of the voice in which it travels, right? Many would say, feel the vibration, right? Or feel the vibration. It's a song, I know, but you understand what I'm saying. Or positive vibes or negative vibes, right? You would understand this, right? If you're a fan of The Flash, you know that, oh, what's his name? I think it's Mario, the Spanish kid in Flash. He goes by vibe, so on and so forth, etc. I know it's crazy, but if you put all of it together, these are just analogies, so I could speak to many people for whomever is watching this. Now, the next thing you want to do is you want to catch. So you want to understand tone, you want to understand pitch, and then you want to catch. What does that mean? To catch is to receive. So there are things you need to do, right? So you need to see, you need to feel, and you need to hear. A lot of you will normally see people and you can't judge a book by its cover, for one day it might save your life. Now, the reason why I state that is because many people will judge people based upon, well, their presentation. And back in the day, they used to teach people like me that presentation is 9/10 of the law. So if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it must be a duck unless it's not, right? And you could see this with television or movies, right? When people do like undercover stuff and stuff like that, oh, they fit the role because they look a certain way, they dress a certain part, and they know how to carry out certain conversations as though they've been exposed to that world. Now, others may stand out, so on and so forth. However, that's going with the generality, right? Now, when you're speaking to the individual, remember, everybody's different. So when you get that person one on one, or you go up to somebody one on one, you may have to adjust and make some tweaks to your pitch, your tone, and how you catch the information, right? Because everything is information, right? Whether it's speech, whether it's social media posting, so on and so forth. You're trying to communicate to the world. You're Everything around us is normally alive and it's trying to reach out, right? If you've seen, some of my posts in the past with the shorts, I talk about a tree. A tree reaches out and searches for water. That's why it extends the roots, so on and so forth. And it also reaches for sunlight. That's why it grows up and outward to maximize the sunlight that it could receive so that it could create photosynthesis and generate food for itself, as well as the whole working system. And so moving forward, once you catch information, it's time to understand it, i.e., interpret that information. What does that person mean? Now, if you remember the last couple lessons, I talked about perspective and perception. There's another gentleman out there by the name of Andrew Bustamante. Great and awesome guy. I actually just got put onto his perspective and perception video that he did years ago. Before, this was after, right? Way after I did lesson one, I saw that video. So there was no correlation. However, there was a correlation after I saw the video, and I was like, hey, this guy's kind of like me, so on and so forth, in a sense. You know what I'm saying? So he knows how to control his tone, his pitch. He knows how to catch and receive information, interpret it, and understand it. Now, the next thing he's very good at, and I suggest you become very good at this, especially if you are in business and any marketing or sales department, or maybe you're a leader of a team or you're a project manager, is to release, right? What do I mean by release? So when you receive the tone and the pitch and you interpret the information, remember to leave out your own cognitive biases, right? And there's a lot of them. Ty Lopez talks about the 25 cognitive biases. That was written by Charlie Munger. That's something completely different, but they're false fallacies that tricks the brain into making mistakes. Now, once you understand this, you want to release, meaning take your internal emotion and feeling that you're feeling from that tone and pitch. Maybe somebody is coming off aggressive, so on and so forth, right? So take that emotion, that feeling that you're hearing from the information, and drop it so that you can truly understand what is being said, and don't listen to respond. You want to, how do I say this? I think it was Stephen Covey that said most people listen to respond instead of listening to understand. And that's something that most people have a trouble doing. They just want to quickly respond to everything that you're doing. They want to point the finger, possibly make fun of you. Let's say you give the bird to the air because you're in an emotional state, so on and so forth, and somebody lied to you about something. Now they're playing a game, so you flick the bird off to the sky or whatever, and you think that that intention means something because it offended you. No, you took it personally. You and your friends took it personally. That's why they pointed out and says, "Oh, he knows what that means. He went like this," so on and so forth. Now, I hope I don't get canceled for this video because I expressed it. However, it was an emotional tone, right? Because if I had no voice, I would have to use sign language, right? So how would I say "I love you" in sign language? Well, one of the ways would be to go like this, right? Most of you guys see this symbol in the what is it? Megan Thee Stallion video, right? I get money, I'm a star. Stop. But this is sign language for "I love you." So if you don't have an understanding of what's being said, then stay out of it or ask questions, because in order to be interesting, you have to be interested. And if you're not interested in learning something, be quiet and move on and stay in your lane and go on with your own thing, right? Because all you want to do is cause chaos, and chaos is fine maybe in your world, but I know other people that want to live, a happy life or a positive one or an optimistic one or just one with a lack of stress, because there are many stresses in the world. So maybe for an allotted time, they're free for that moment. Remember, everybody has issues, so do you. So when you see or hear something, make sure you not only interpret it, but understand it, right? So that is the release of emotions. Don't take things personally. I keep saying this over and over again, and I don't think people understand that. I think people normally they want to play how to get away with murder. They want to be the detective. They want to be the Sherlock Holmes or the Carmen Sandiego, so on and so forth, so on and so forth, because it was cool. It looks cool on television, and I could be a part of something. Remember earlier I said everybody's reaching out for something, like the tree. Everybody wants to be a part of something. Even if you sit in a movie theater by yourself, I guarantee you that somebody will come and sit next to you. Now, I learned this a long time ago studying humanities, but there's a gentleman that wrote a book. It's in the Pickup Society. However, he talks about people's natural ability to want to survive and replicate, right? And so Mystery being one of the gentlemen in there, but I think Stiles wrote the book. I think if I remember his name correctly, Neil Strauss might be his name. I might be butchering it, but definitely check it out. They talk about, back in the day during times of tribal times, you had a greater chance of survival if you came together as a group, meaning work together, because it increases your chances of survival and you can get more work done. Not to necessarily say that what's it called? Many hands creates idle work, so on and so forth, etc. But many hands or teamwork makes the dream work, right? So if you're trying to accomplish something, remember that, right? And always take things with a grain of salt and check your emotions at the door, especially in business, but also in life if you're trying to be an authentic, genuine person that's trying to build a connection. Now, after you're done releasing whatever it is that you just got, when it comes to the information, that feeling you get when somebody screams at you, right? You want to go ahead and what's it called? How do I say this? You want to pitch back to them, right? But you kind of want to match, or you want to do the opposite to switch that person's emotional state to get them back to where they are, or to have a what's known as balance or an equilibrium, right? And so the little thing that I put together is called catch, release, juke, jive, thrive, right? So you want to catch the information, you want to release the emotions, so on and so forth, and you want to juke, right? So, for example, if you're into football, juking means to move to the left, to the right. Jive, it's just an expression, right? But, a lot of people know the jive is dancing, right? And you're communicating with your partner on a dance floor. When you do so without any words, that's interpersonal. And then you want to thrive. You want to eat. Most of the time, you want to leave people on a higher note than what they left you at or what they came to you at, right? So when they leave you, let me correct myself. You want to leave people on a higher note than what they came to you with, in other words, so that they feel good. And that feel good feeling will keep them wanting to come back for more. So remember, catch the information, release your emotional tension, understand what it is that they're saying. Juke, meaning, I'll give an example. I was at work the other day, and I asked this gentleman, I said, "What's going on? Is there anything I can help you with?" And he screamed at me, "My effing tires blew out." And I was like, "I didn't know that." And I screamed right back at him. He goes, and he he literally shook his head, and he's like, he lowered his tone, his pitch, and everything. He said, "Sorry, I didn't know that," so on and so forth. And then I went to proceed to go ahead and try to assist him the best that I could while I was working, so on and so forth, to assist him with his blown out tire. He eventually got everything situated, but I was showing kindness. Now, kindness is different than being nice, right? Because when you're kind, you still set your emotional boundaries, and you could do that with the tone of your voice, your body posturing and position, so on and so forth. When you're nice, you're nice. You're nice to everybody. "Can I do this? Yeah. Can I do that? Yeah. Can I have this? Can I take this from you?" And that gives people the impression that you're kind of a pushover. When you're kind to somebody, or as the expression goes, kill them with kindness. You are not only being nice, but you're being stern and firm and holding your ground in the tension of the room or the environment in which you are in, or the conversation. So keep that, bundle that up. Go ahead and take notes. I hope you are. And if this video is helping you, go ahead and smash that like button, and don't forget to follow me for more. Definitely subscribe, because we also have lesson 7 coming, along with a couple others. And you could go ahead and check out the other stuff that I have on my channels. Anything if you need help with business, leadership, marketing, so on and so forth. BLM, that's funny. Business leadership and marketing. You can go ahead and check out my channel, because I go ahead and show you how to go ahead and utilize AI for those categories and things like that, to make your life easier, so that you don't have so much on your plate, and to reduce the stress in your life. So keep that in mind. Now let's keep rolling. So when you get things and expect a reaction when you ask someone a question while being vulnerable and authentic, because most people don't actually care. So most people are not used to someone who actually does. What do I mean by this? Well, I was taught that when you ask somebody, "How's your day going?" you're supposed to genuinely not only ask that question, but genuinely care about that person's day, right? In order to be interesting, you have to be interested. Don't just say good morning to somebody. I mean, maybe they're busy, so on and so forth. You pick up on their cues. They're walking fast. It looks like they're going to a meeting, so on and so forth. But if you're at a networking event, or a gathering, or a church, or a school, or whatever, you want to genuinely, or maybe even in business, right? You want to genuinely care about what the other person is doing, right? Or what they're feeling, right? Or what their situation is when you ask how their day is, right? "Oh, my day's crappy." Well, what was crappy about it? You know, most people aren't used to that, because most people don't ask those kind of questions, because most people only focus on self, right? Psychology would dictate that you have the id, the ego, and the super ego. Religions would be like, "Oh, well, there's, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit." Well, where do you think it came from, right? There's always a crossover and analogy. You have Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The list goes on and on. The three musketeers minus D'Artagnan, because he wasn't a musketeer yet till later. Um, that's for another lesson, but I will pick up on that later, because everything normally happens in threes for a particular reason, right? Even in sports, 3 strikes, you're out, so on and so forth, right? So think about that. Even when it comes to primary colors, right? Your primary colors, depending on what medium you're in, right? You would have red, yellow, and blue if you're dealing with art and textile paint, right? Or textual paint, something tangible, right? If you're dealing with digital, you have RBG, right? Red, blue, green, right? So that's how the colors get manipulated to create other colors that you're seeing, or the hue in which that's being viewed in front of you, right? That's how you are able to see and depict color. Same thing with everything else, right? Because even a tree has, well, green leaves, a brown bark or stem, and then if you open it up inside, the wood is normally like a beige or white color. So even that comes in threes. Complex flowers, very few of them have multiple colors for a specific reason. So think about that the next time you judge, right? Because a wise woman, or I should say an actress, in the movie A Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger, may he rest in peace, um, he was talking about jousting and being masculine, and I gotta win, win, win. And she goes, blah, 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 blah. And what did she say? And a flower never knocked a man off a horse either. And he said, what in the world does that mean? She goes, well, if you want to prove that you love me, I want you to lose. And he said, excuse me? She goes, don't prove that you could win. Anybody could win. Everybody has testosterone here. Look at all the knights, so on and so forth, etc. Right? You know, if you want to win, lose on purpose, even though you know that you can win. That's how you're going to prove to me, between us, that you love me, right? And so what happened? He stands there and his friends look at him and they ask him. The gentleman that played Jarvis was in there. I think his name was Chaucer, right? And this story was pulled from the Canterbury Tales for those of you who like to read books. But he goes, excuse me, my lord, what are you doing? And he goes, losing. He goes, why? He goes, because Jocelyn told me to lose to prove my love to her, so on and so forth, etc. So he didn't care. He was trying to communicate something silently to someone else in front of everybody while expressing his profound love, etc., for this female individual. And I took that in, you know, with a lot, because most people would let their pride or their prowess or their gravitas get to them, so on and so forth. And you can see this with the other person or the other archetype within the movie, who just keeps bashing him, making fun of him. Oh, look at your armor, so on and so forth, this, that, and the third. Looks like an antique. If you watch the movie, he normally gets, in the end, everybody gets what they deserve. And so, you know, I'll let you go ahead and watch the movie. I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but that was my example there. So just to recap, expect a reaction when you ask somebody a question while still being vulnerable and authentic, because most people don't actually care. So most people are not used to someone that actually does. There's a quote that people move from pain, or I should say, pain and pleasure are similar depending how you are conditioned. So everybody's heard of Stockholm syndrome, so on and so forth, etc. And people will move towards pain, move from pain towards pleasure every time. The thing is, you have to identify exactly what is their pain. Where is it coming from? How do they identify what is pain, and then what is pleasure to them or comfort to them? Because people want to be comfortable. They're not used to being uncomfortable, right? And in order to succeed, in order to juke, jive, and thrive in conversation, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Another word for that is being vulnerable and authentic. So take that in, and remember that the next time you try to treat somebody or use words in a certain manner when you're receiving information, you don't know where that person's at. They may be going here because they feel pleasure from it, or they may feel pain, so on and so forth, etc., and that takes it away, or vice versa. So if you don't identify the characteristics of the things, then you're not going to truly understand without either a face-to-face conversation or at least a more direct conversation. Even though somebody may be trying to communicate with them, you have to understand them first, right? And I'll get to another expression later, but let's move forward in this lesson. So, for example, if your whole life has been surrounded by pain, mistrust, heartache, etc., when you find something that's good, you will self-sabotage in order to go back to your original baseline. Now, if you remember Andrew Bustamante, he talks about baselines, so on and so forth. But what is that, right? How is that person normally acting? The thing is, that person may be acting when they're with you normally. Think about it, right? What do they do in their private time? What do they do when they're alone? What do they do when you strip technology away from them, so on and so forth? Oh, they're actually a normal person. We took all the technology and everything. Nothing was affecting them. There was no other outside influences. And they were just walking around talking to people. So occasionally they would go to the gym or work out, enjoy nature, this, that, and the third, journal, etc. So that's a healthy individual, which tells people like me that something is influencing or something's counteracting or interacting that person's peace. And in order to bring them and show them how to achieve that peace, you want to go ahead and surround them or introduce them to people that are like themselves. Tony Robbins once said that people like people who are like themselves or how they would like to be. And with that, you would have to be around people that, well, gone through the same things that you have gone through. Not only that, talk about it, so on and so forth, because that energy actually lifts people up instead of bringing them down. And the last thing you want to do is bring people down, because everyone knows when you're depressed or whatever, that also compounds on everything else, and the body also takes a toll when it comes to your immune system because of cortisol, so on and so forth, the stress hormone, that is. So you want to pay attention to all these things. And I know it sounds like a lot, but once you get the hang of it, you'll be able to interact and communicate very effectively. So if your life was surrounded by happiness, joy, and good, etc., when you see something bad, you will go back to your baseline, right? But what is the baseline for that individual? Remember, everybody is different. Even if you work in the same company or organization or whatever, everybody has a different story, because the story that they create is in their own mind, right? Everybody has their own story to tell, but they also live in their own world. So have those conversations, share different things as well as similarities, such as different types of shows that they like to watch, or cartoons, or movies, or books that they like to read, or people that influence them, things like that. And then you could go ahead and build rapport. But remember, you want to be vulnerable and authentic. People could smell bullshit, and the moment they pick up on a lie, they're going to go ahead and say, well, I don't trust you. I know you're lying. You've been lying, because most people will lie and do things just to get and do what they want, right? And you could see this with a lot of sleazy car salesmen, so on and so forth. They'll say what they have to so they could get what they want. They don't really care about your financial situation. They don't care about the other stuff. They don't care, so on and so forth. Just like people that call you to do like debt consolidation or whatever to sell you something, it's about the almighty dollar for them. If they truly care, tell them to do it for free and then see what happens, right? So take that in, understand that, and let's move forward. So once you understand the psychology behind this, you'll start to understand connecting in life is a little bit easier than what most people think. Because if you haven't had the experience of having a child or having a pet, then it's going to be very difficult to understand interpersonal communications, because you have to remember, for the first 1 or 2 years, a child doesn't speak. So you have to understand what they're saying without any words, right? If they're crying, what kind of cry is it? If they're screaming or saying something, what are they doing, etc. If they want to have fun, or if they seem too energetic, well, let them play. Don't try to sedate them. Let them play and get that energy out, and I guarantee you they'll fall asleep later. So these are the things that people ask for, but they come into contact with it, and then all of a sudden they don't want it because they don't understand it, right? People say, Mike, why did you invest in this pen? Well, this pen is cool because it's a flashlight, laser pointer. I could use it as a stylus. And then, of course, if I twist it, I could use it as a pen. And then, of course, if I'm waiting, it's like a fidget spinner. I could go ahead and twist this part right here, and it could keep me occupied. However, you know, people have different tools and different things that work for them. It's just something that I utilize because it's very versatile, right? Let's say, someone's car breaks down and I need to look at the engine, but it's, in the evening, so it's dark. Whoa, I got a pen on me. It has a flashlight, and now I could look at the engine. And then I could go ahead and then point out where in the engine is the issue and the problem. So you have to look at things for not only the good of it, but, take yourself out of the bad or negative mindset, because negativity always weighs heavier than the good. It's been said that you need about 10 good actions to counteract one negative action. And it's very true, because negativity, if you look at marketing, hits very hard, sharp, and fast, and it stays with you very quickly. Now, there was an expression, for instance, when it comes to negativity, and people may push back on this as far as discipline is concerned. I once heard a saying that said you should discipline someone with a stick no bigger than your thumb, right? Now, that's maybe one interpretation, and a lot of people may take that as, oh well, that's abuse. But if you were to take the same context and switch it, right? So for instance, I'm a martial artist, so one of the martial arts that I study is Filipino martial arts, and the eskrima sticks that are used in there are about the size or the thickness of your thumb. So now if I say I'm going to discipline you and I'm going to show you martial arts and how to train yourself, I'm going to train you with a stick that is no bigger than my thumb. Look at a teacher. Back in the day when we had chalkboards, they used to have a measuring stick or a pointer. Right before technology came out, they used to have like a wooden dowel, etc., and it was no bigger than a thumb. So you have to take the interpretations of the sayings that you are hearing and try to correlate them to not only the world around you, but to your own research. If you're going based upon assumption, as they say, if when you assume, you only make a out of you and me. So take that with a grain of salt before you speak to me. That's a little poetry for those that are you trying to defeat me. So when I say these things and I say these words and I'm using poetry instead of absurdity, right? These are the things that I'm trying to get through to people. And it's been proven, right? So how do I say this? It's been proven that the number of connections you have in your life can extend your life expectancy, especially those connections that are authentic, right? You know, Prince sang the song "When Doves Cry," right? But why was he talking about when doves cry? Well, doves pair bond, right? And they normally pair bond for life. So when the spouse or the one of the partners ends up passing away, that's it. They cry, they mourn, they fall into depression. They actually sometimes die from what's known as a broken heart. The same thing happens in the real world. However, there's a difference, right? Because, and I'm just going to put this out there, I told many females this, you have a lot of at bats because there are many men in the world that are very lonely and they're very willing to take care of a beautiful woman or a woman that they deem to be beautiful because beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? So, therefore, if you are single as a female, right, or you are single with female energy or feminine energy, there will be a masculine energy there to take care of you. Now, if we were to switch it, so on and so forth, to destroy a man, you must destroy his heart, for his mind is a forged weapon. Now, what do I mean by that, right? Well, if the ribs protect the heart, so on and so forth, then a man can be very strong. And this is where, you know, some men may be scared to show their emotions, so they go to safe places. But when people get upset, they normally pick at the emotional part because it's very easy. The thing is, psychologically, that actually makes them depressed and it affects the heart. So, therefore, their cortisol levels increase, their heart takes an effect because of the stress or the depression or whatever, or the loss. Men have a hard time bouncing back from certain things because normally men will fall harder than women. And and when I speak that, I'm not talking about physicality. Remember, I'm talking about feminine and masculine energy. If you remember the last video that I touched upon, it's the same thing. Even in the LGBT community, you can go ahead and see this, right? So take that in and understand it, because I guarantee you, once you start seeing the world through that lens and not through a looking glass, you know, and starting trying to anticipate what's to come instead of what is, you'll start understanding what's around you and the gift that you have. So, when you hear the term authentic, this includes the term vulnerability. See, most people don't understand this, right? What does it mean to be authentic? Well, I'm authentically this. Yeah, but when somebody tells you something that's personal to them, you have to be vulnerable and now relate to them, because I'm pretty sure you can with whatever experience you have, especially with age. You know, when I was younger, I hung around a lot of older people. So Gary Vaynerchuk talks about taking time out to go spend time in old folks' homes, so on and so forth. Some of my best friends were old people, so on and so forth. And no offense to people that are over the age of 60. I'm just saying I'm in my 30s. So you're a lot older than me. But I spent a lot of time, and so I learned lessons, and I learned and I heard certain things, right? And I heard the what ifs, and I should have did this and took the risk, etc., so on and so forth. So when people say, Mike, why do you try so hard? Why do you do this? They are not going to let you do this. I remember my sister said this vividly. Oh, you can't do that. They are not going to, let you, so on and so forth. There was a gentleman by the name of Marty Wells that, I was working with at some point, who barely knew his job. And no offense to him. However, He just didn't know his role or his position in order to lead in the direction in which he wanted to go to. I think he thought because he had a degree that, said PhD, made him qualified to, do something in a different category with understanding, and then get, you know, try to show power or whatever by saying, oh, well, it's called syntax. Do you even know what syntax is? It's the very thing that you're doing when you criticize me and act like a mirror to try to show me something or prove a point. You're exposing yourself, your true colors, your true intention, and exactly where you stand because you think you have power or leverage. If you study the art of war, it's been said and it's been told that when you are strong, appear weak. When you are weak, appear strong. Most people have a hard time doing that. Now, when it comes to being authentic and vulnerable, if you're trying to deceive somebody, they're going to sniff the bullshit, right? Because why? Because you're trying to appear as something that you're not, and you're not very good at it. This takes practice, right? And when it comes to deception, manipulation, and influence, remember those three categories. Scout's honor. Uh, Mockingjay. Sorry. I don't know if you guys seen the Hunger Games, but Mockingjay is the title of the movie for those of you who might get offended by whatever it is that you're thinking right now. However, these are the things you have to pay attention to, right? These are the intricacies to conversation. These are the small little subtleties or the psychological subtleties that play along in life, conversation, and everyday magic, right? So when, excuse me. So this includes vulnerability. So most people don't understand this and they get the two words confused and they utilize authenticity with being one way and vulnerability with being another way with emotion tied to it, right? And the question is, do you even understand, right? And the way to understand everything is to be both, right? You want to be authentic and you want to be vulnerable, meaning check your emotions at the door or bring them in if you need to, especially if you're trying to lift someone up and relate to them because they're having a bad day or whatever. Maybe their day is going worse than yours and you could lift them up. And of course, vice versa, the law of reciprocity would say that it would normally make you feel good because just like Christmas or like taking your kids to Disney, you don't care about the price or the dollars you spend. It's the smile on the face and the experience that matters the most. Money comes and goes, but those small moments last forever. Remember that. So, when you are genuinely trying to make a connection with somebody, you want to remember that people want to be felt, heard, and understood. This will create an authentic relationship since you would have to be vulnerable. I mean, just flat out, you have to be vulnerable. So if you're talking to me and be like, hey, Michael, so on and so forth, etc. I think you're awesome, this, that, and the third. I have a couple friends that think you're awesome, so on and so forth. We should meet up sometime. We're hosting a networking event, or I'm throwing something at my place. Why don't you come by? Why don't you throw the invite, right? You know, there's nothing wrong with throwing the invite. But if you're trying to do something else, or you're trying to be more discreet, that's different. So going back to the three, right? Deception, manipulation, and influence. If you're trying to be deceptive, it's going to come off awkward, right? If you're trying to manipulate, people smell and see through the BS. If you're trying to influence, you're being authentic and vulnerable, and you're including yourself in that own scenario and what you would do and how you would go ahead and then give advice to the other individual to achieve success or the feeling or state that you are in so that they too can hang out with you, right? They say eagles don't fly in flocks. That's very true, but last time I checked, I've never seen an eagle attack another eagle. They normally work together. They say, hey, the food source is over there, so on and so forth. Same thing with specialized units, right? Marines will work with Marines. We'll make fun of other branches, and it's the same all around. But then you have your special forces and special operations, right? Now, I've never seen them have friendly fire. I've always seen them work together, not to conspire. So, when you're understanding these things, you have to understand the poetry and the beauty in which communication is not only felt, heard, but also understood. So, this will create an authentic relationship since you would have to be vulnerable to show empathy. right? A lot of people say, oh, you have no empathy. I guarantee you the person that's saying that probably doesn't even know the definition or can barely explain it, so on and so forth. When they talk about empathy, they just don't like the way you're making them feel because they lack understanding because they're choosing to listen to respond instead of listening to understand, right? Some people are a little hard-headed. And when I was studying Tai Lopez, 67 Steps, there was a part in there where he talks about how people in psychology, based upon Dr. David Buss, after the age of 25, they actually have to learn through trauma or trial and error because it's very difficult, for people to take on more information because of all the past stuff that's happened, right? Also, a lot of people don't work out. When you work out, it increases the neuroplasticity of the brain. Now I'm getting a little technical here, but pretty much your ability to have a flexible brain versus a calloused brain. The expression you can't teach an old dog new tricks, that goes for those who cannot open their mind, if that makes sense, right? And Bruce Lee once said, you must open your mind. You must be like water, right? You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You need to be adaptable. You need to be able to overcome, but you also need to see clearly, similarly to water, because water is clear, sugar is not. So when you drink a Coca-Cola, can you see through it? Great. Do you think that this should be going in your body? Not all the time. Why? Well, because it's not something that's, been clearly pointed out as serving everything else. I guarantee you, if you have a plant at home or if you like taking care of plants, why don't you feed it, soda and everything else instead of water and see how long it lasts, right? Because we're all a reflection of our universe. So if the tree can't take it from very long period of time, how long do you think you're going to survive without certain characteristics kicking in, like working out, sweating, moving your body, etc., getting that thing out, or I should say revving the engine when you work out? In other words, increasing your heart rate so you could digest stuff quicker. Think about it. All right. So, in this lesson, we talked about hearing, feeling, and understanding. And many of you who have relationships have heard the expression, oh, it's like you're here, you're listening, but you don't hear me, right? Or you hear me, but you don't feel me, so on and so forth. It's like you don't know what I'm saying. That's the understanding part. That's the small third step that most people miss. They'll feel, they'll hear you out, so on and so forth, but at the end of the day, they just give you their own opinion. They don't truly understand what it is that they're saying. Example: I remember I was at a bar and I said, I'm going to step outside and smoke a fag. And somebody got genuinely upset. And I said, what's your problem? And they said, oh, I can't believe you're against gay people and this, that, and the third. I said, I'm not against gay people. I said I was going to go smoke a fag. Well, doesn't that mean this? No. If you look up the dictionary, a fag in the UK is actually a cigarette. So the interpretations of words only have the meaning that you assign to them. Selma Hayek once said this. Words that you get offended by, you're only offended by them because of the meaning you assign to them. If you knew all the meanings of the word that was being used, then you would be able to understand or interpret better. If you don't know, or I should say, if you pretend like you know, then you're going to get lost in the sauce. This is why you have to ask questions. Remember, in business, you have to succeed. In order to succeed, you have to be interesting. And in order to be interesting, you have to be interested. All right. So how do you hear actively? We spoke about it above. Use your visual cues. Remember interpersonal communication. How do you feel? Pitch and tone. Remember to drop emotions at the door, right? So release that before you decide to pitch again or and re-engage with a conversation. And then, of course, understand, right? If you don't know what the person is saying, do not, because it's going to cause a ripple effect, right? If you throw a pebble into a pond, it causes a ripple effect, right? Because it was a disturbance, right? Within the peace of the calm water, right? So if you don't understand something, definitely ask a question before you try to engage with the limited knowledge that you have. Lastly, and this is, we're wrapping up here, and thank you for everybody that stayed this far in this lesson, so on and so forth. this helped you, go ahead and subscribe. And please, by all means, share this with somebody that you think can utilize it, that can maybe take it into their life and apply it to others. Because at the end of the day, it's not only about receiving, it's about giving. And at the end of the day, if you ever watch the movie Pay It Forward, that's what it's about. So remember, we all have both masculine and feminine energy. And in order to feel, hear, and understand someone, you need to have an understanding of both. Thing is, most people get trapped by what's known as dogma. Remember Steve Jobs? He said, don't get trapped by other people's dogma, ideologies, or beliefs that keep you trapped in a world in which there's so much to explore, right? So, understanding that you have both masculine and feminine traits, remember the analogy with music, right? Most men are scared to dance until their favorite song comes on and then their foot starts bouncing or, tapping the floor or whatever. They move their finger to the beat because they don't know how to express themselves, because every time they did, somebody, shined a light and made fun of them versus building them up. This is why, certain people say, oh, I wish we did this more. Why aren't you more like this? Well, why don't you encourage that person when they do it? And maybe they will, right? So remember, when you're looking at the male and female symbol, right? Remember, we have the male symbol that looked like this, right? Sometimes people would sit with their hands, so on and so forth, but it's an upward angle or an echelon, right? You would see this on chevrons in the military, etc. So forgive the background noise. I'm in a different environment right now. But then you have the female, right, which is a downward V, right? Now, when you put those two together, it makes a six-pointed star. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a very much of a fan of technology. And if you were to go ahead and put an asterisk, right, and type out an asterisk, you would get a six-pointed star, which also means to multiply, right? What was the saying? Go forth and multiply, not go forth and destroy, not go forth and add. It's go forth and multiply, right? Take that energy and make more of it, not make less of it, not control it, not bring it to your level, right? Look at the Walmart, it has an asterisk. Count how many it is on there. Wonder why, right? Has the best prices. We love to see you smile, Mickey D's, right? So you want to amplify, not subtract when it comes to the interactions between you and the invisible. And if you forget what the invisible is, it's not only what's not being said, it's what's not being heard. And once you are able to hear, feel, and understand what people are saying, you'll not only understand the word, but you will understand them better as well. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been lesson 6, how to connect and see the invisible. Now, I'm going to be going in more depth with this later on, as soon as all my lessons are done a part of class, which stands for creativity, logic, art, science, and spirituality, and how it's all connected. And I'm going to have a private mastermind group, as you would say, where after you watch these lessons, I will go ahead and invite you to go ahead and ask me more questions to bring more understanding. And I promise you, just like I hope you promise me, if you do sign up and come, to be authentic and vulnerable, and remember to feel, hear, and understand. And most importantly, when it comes to seeing the invisible, you want to remember tone, pitch, catch, interpret, release, or catch, release, juke, jive, and thrive. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. I will see you in lesson 7. Love you guys. Take care. Bye, 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 bye.